black waitress had spent years working double shifts at a small diner, earning just enough to cover rent. It was past midnight, and she was exhausted after a long shift. As she locked up, she noticed a small boy outside. He was hunched over in a battered wheelchair, his dark hair plastered to his forehead by the rain. The chill in the air crawled under his cheap sweater. Concerned, she ran around the diner and tapped on the window. "Hey, sweetie," she called gently, crouching beside him. "What are you doing out here all alone?" The boy's hands were trembling as he lifted a cold bowl of soup. He was watching her carefully, his blue eyes guarded. Serena gestured inside. "Come on, you can have a table in there." She smiled and lifted her apron straps. Reluctantly, the boy followed her through the door. Inside, the warmth and bright neon lights of the diner enveloped them. Serena helped him to a booth away from the windows. She took off her apron and draped it around his shoulders to ward off the chill. "Welcome, Daniel," Serena said, recognizing the boy from the local streets. Daniel mustered a small smile. She ordered him a grilled cheese sandwich and hot tomato soup. While she waited for the food, she talked to him softly about school and cartoons. Daniel was shy, so Serena let him eat in quiet comfort. When the sandwich arrived, Daniel's eyes lit up. He wrapped both hands around it and took a big bite. The cheese stretched in gooey strings. "This is the best thing I've ever had," he murmured softly. His voice was filled with wonder. Serena smiled proudly. "Good food makes everything better," she said lightly. But inside, she felt a familiar ache. Daniel was so young and already carrying the weight of the world. Unbeknownst to Serena, someone was watching. Across the street, hidden in shadows, a sleek black Bentley idled quietly. Its tinted windows reflected the diner's neon glow. Inside that car sat Raymond Holt, the boy's father. At 46, Raymond was a man known for control and ruthlessness. He ran Holt Dynamics, a billion-dollar tech empire, and nothing sentimental or human was supposed to sway him. Yet now, he watched in silence as a stranger fed his son for free. Raymond's jaw tightened. He had been on an urgent call with investors in Tokyo and had told Daniel to wait just a few minutes. He hadn't expected this. With a click, he hung up and issued a simple order to his assistant. "Find out everything you can about the woman who just fed my son." Back in the diner, Daniel was finishing his meal with a bright grin. Soup stains dotted his chin, and Serena gently wiped them away. She patted his shoulder. "Messy eater, huh?" she teased with a kind smile. Daniel just laughed, swinging his legs under the table. His tired face had softened. That wary look kids shouldn't have to wear had momentarily vanished. Serena felt a small swell of satisfaction. Helping Daniel, even if only this one time, made her forget the long night and her aching back. That feeling was enough for her. Just then, the front door opened, letting in cold rain and wind. A tall woman in a baseball cap and hoodie stepped inside, pushing through the rush of air. Her name was Nora, Daniel's aunt, or so she claimed. Daniel's eyes widened. "Mum, you're here," he cried, reaching for her. Serena tried to act casual, but inside, she was tense. Nora gave Daniel a quick hug. "Honey, your ride is here. We need to go." She nodded slightly at Serena, but didn't speak. There was a strange look in her eyes. A silent warning. Serena didn't say anything. She had learned long ago not to get involved. Daniel began to cry. Nora scooped him up and wheeled him out. He called back, "Thanks, Serena. You're the best." Serena forced a smile, feeling both warm and uneasy. Outside, the Bentley's headlights flashed. The back door opened and Raymond emerged, his broad frame illuminated by the neon sign. Daniel buckled safely in the back seat, gave Serena a shy wave. Raymond calmly shut the door and got in. "She's sharp," Nora admitted quietly to him as she settled in. Raymond didn't say a word, just nodded. As the Bentley pulled away, Serena watched the tail lights fade. She was soaked to the skin, tips in her pocket, barely enough to cover rent. Still, the memory of Daniel's smiling face warmed her, but something about tonight didn't feel right. She had seen eyes like Nora's before, protective and knowing. When Serena finally reached her small one-bedroom apartment, the building's thin walls and broken heater added to the chill in her bones. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it, rubbing a hand over her wet face. Serena was tempted to just forget about it, but her gut told her not to. The thought nagged at her all night. Hours later, when the streetlights were dim and the alley was empty, there was a knock at her door. Serena's heart leapt. Who would come at this hour? Carefully, she peered through the peephole. Outside stood a tall man in an expensive suit, broad shoulders, stern eyes. Serena quickly slipped out of view and locked the door behind her. Her heart pounded. Almost on cue, the knock came again. Serena touched the chain on the door and cracked it open, just enough to see who it was. The man was the boy's father, Raymond Holt himself. His eyes were sharp as he spoke. "Miss Carter," he said softly. Serena's pulse quickened. "I'm Raymond Holt." He sounded tired, concerned. Serena's hand trembled on the chain. "I saw what you did tonight," he continued quietly. "I was watching from across the street." Serena stiffened. The room seemed to shrink. I don't know what you mean," she stammered, hoping to close the door. But he didn't flinch. "You gave my son dinner tonight," Raymond said. His voice was gentle but firm. "You didn't treat him like an inconvenience. You treated him like a person." Serena felt something tighten in her chest. "He's hungry," she said softly, still holding the chain in case. "You had a house. You can buy food. Why?" Raymond shook his head. "I haven't been home much lately, and I've seen people do a lot worse than make a kid a sandwich." He gestured to the dining room behind her. "Mind if I come in?" Against her better judgment, Serena stepped back and let him enter. He walked past the kitchen table and sat down opposite her on the small couch. She closed the door, but kept her back to it. "I don't think this is charity," Raymond began. "I think it's paying a debt." Serena swallowed. "What are you talking about?" "Serena Carter," he said, meeting her eyes. "I'm CEO of Holt Dynamics. My son will be fine. He's safe with his aunt. But I couldn't just stand by and do nothing. And I wanted to thank you properly." He slid an envelope across the table to her. It had her name on it. Serena felt her breath catch. "What is this?" she asked. Her hands shook as she picked it up. "A job offer," Raymond said simply. 6 figures, benefits, everything. The CEO has signed it. Serena stared. "You want me to work at Holt Dynamics?" Her mind raced. "Why? I'm just a waitress." Raymond leaned back, arms folded. "I'm offering you a fair wage, not charity. You've earned it by your character." He hesitated, choosing his words. "Serena, I've seen my share of people who flatter and manipulate for money. You helped my son without even knowing who he was. That shows a lot." Serena's head spun. This wasn't how things normally worked. She opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a contract. She read the first line. "Vice President of Corporate Strategy, Holt Dynamics." Her voice trembled. "They must have 100 people who'd kill for a job like this. Why would they pick me?" Raymond's expression softened. "Because not many people have your courage or your kindness. You're the one I need, Serena Carter." Serena crossed her arms, trying to steady her voice. I barely know you. I'm a waitress. He met her gaze. I know enough. For a long moment, the only sound was the rain tapping on the window. Serena's mind raced. She was scared, excited, confused, all at once. Finally, she exhaled. Okay, she said quietly. I'll think about it. Raymond stood and extended his hand. That's all I ask. He gave a small, understanding smile, then left as quietly as he had come. Serena sat there with the envelope and contract in her lap. Her heart was still pounding, but a spark of hope had ignited inside her. There were so many questions and so much she didn't know. But one thing she was certain of. Tonight had changed everything. The next morning, Serena arrived at the gleaming Holt Dynamics headquarters. Her uniform from the diner had been exchanged for a crisp office outfit. The building towered around her like something out of a dream. She drew in a steadying breath and walked in. At exactly 9 a.m., she entered the boardroom and found Raymond waiting, chair turned. He glanced at his watch. 2 minutes late, he said, calmly. Serena bit back an apology. Traffic. I won't let it happen again. Raymond nodded. Good. I'm counting on it. He turned to face the room full of executives. Nora, introduce our new hire. His assistant, Nora Winters, stepped forward with a notepad. Miss Carter, she said smoothly. Welcome to Holt Dynamics. Serena met her gaze with a cool smile. Oh, we're doing last names. All right. Good to see you again, Miss Winters. Nora's eyes flickered at the greeting, half annoyance, half respect. Serena had recognized that look before. Everyone at this table expected the new quiet hire to sit down without a word, but that wasn't how she did things. Shall I brief her on the project? Nora asked, pointing at a tablet. Raymond waved her off. I'll do it. You handle the other meeting. Nora cleared her throat and slipped out, tossing a final glance over her shoulder. Serena smirked and got to work. Raymond dropped a thick file in front of her, labeled Project Orion. Opening it, Serena read, We plan to outsource half of the factory to Taiwan to cut costs. If this is executed correctly, we expect a 15% increase in quarterly profit. Raymond watched her reaction closely. Finally, Serena looked up. And you want me to what? Convince them not to do it? Raymond's voice was calm. I want you to do what you do best. Read people. This group trusts numbers, shareholders, short-term gains. I think you understand something they don't. She raised an eyebrow. Me? Raymond leaned back. People who have nothing to lose fight the hardest. They won't just give up their jobs for some corporate line graph. Serena laughed softly. That sounds like a riddle, she teased. I'm not usually lost in corporate games. Raymond allowed himself a faint smile. Good. Make sure you punch their numbers with empathy, not just graphs. And try not to be late. She rolled her eyes, but inside she felt a thrill. She had a job to do. Minutes later, Serena sat at the large conference table with the executives and Lincoln Langford, the VP of manufacturing. He was a seasoned man, with sharp eyes and a folded pamphlet in front of him. Langford leaned forward. You want to move production overseas? Replace American workers with factories in Asia? That's not our business, Raymond answered evenly. We need to stay competitive. This will reduce costs and fund new research. Langford stared at Serena. And you are? Serena didn't blink. Serena Carter, Holt Dynamics. I just moved to corporate strategy. Langford's expression flickered with surprise. Serena placed her folder of research on the table. Let's talk numbers, she said. Our US labor costs are 30% higher. Automation would cut that by half. boosting our margins significantly. Langford waved a hand dismissively. That's always the solution you corporate types reach for. Serena leaned forward slightly. Or we could find another solution. For example, retrain factory workers for higher skilled roles. The investment would pay back through loyalty and higher output. You won't just save money. You'll keep people with years of experience, motivated and productive. Langford frowned and flipped through the pages she slid toward him. His eyes swept over production charts and community benefit analyses. The room was silent for a long minute. Finally, he closed the folder and looked at Raymond. "We'll revisit the proposal," he said. He stood. "Miss Carter, Mr. Holt." Raymond stood as well. "See that you do," he said quietly. Langford nodded curtly. "We'll meet again next week." Seated again, Serena felt the weight of Raymond's gaze on her. She met it with confidence. He gave a slight nod of approval. That afternoon, as the sun was setting, Raymond found her in the hallway. He grinned. "I knew I hired you for a reason." Serena returned the smile. "Damn right you did," she whispered, mostly to herself. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she had built something real, and that this was just the beginning. 2 months later, Serena had found her stride at Holt. She carried herself differently, head up, shoulders back. She and Raymond had transformed a challenge into a success, proving cost-cutting wasn't the only answer. But then trouble came. One Friday afternoon, Nora found Serena leaving the cafeteria. "We have a problem," Nora said quietly. Serena froze. "Define problem." Nora passed her a tablet. Serena read the headline. Holt Dynamics data leaked. Strategy docs involving Carter financials. Someone had released internal financial plans to the press, and all the details traced back to Serena's department. Serena's blood ran cold. She stared at the screen. "This isn't me," she said. "Of course it isn't," Nora replied. "But you're the easiest target here. People will believe the new girl before they question their own." Serena's pulse pounded. She had been working straight nights on this project. She couldn't have leaked anything. But as the top planner, who seemed to have the most to lose by a deal, she was the obvious culprit to everyone. Soon, they were in Raymond's office, evidence in hand. Raymond pressed a finger to his forehead. "Tell me I'm not wrong," he said. Serena slammed a printout on his desk. "Look at this! You see how every trace leads to me. I didn't do this. I was an easy target, not just a scapegoat." Raymond studied the documents. He looked at Serena. "What I see is a very dangerous game here. But I believe you," he said softly. She exhaled shakily. "And if the board doesn't?" Raymond's face hardened. "Then we'll make them regret it." At that moment, Serena finally felt truly seen and supported. He already trusted her beyond every doubt, and with that trust, they were about to unmask who really set her up. Serena and Nora worked through the night, combing server logs and tracing email headers. By dawn, they had the culprit, Eric Calloway, a senior executive with 10 years at Holt. He had funneled the data out, covering his tracks through dummy accounts. That morning, Serena walked into the boardroom uninvited. The dozen or so board members and executives looked up from their lunch. One of them, a stiff, thin-lipped man, gestured. "Miss Carter, I assume you know why you're here." Serena stood her ground, arms folded. "I do, and I assume you all know you're about to make a very expensive mistake if you don't hear me out." A murmur ran through the room. Langford smirked. Serena stared him down. "I was an easy target, right?" she began. "The new hire." "The outsider," That's why they pinned this on me, to sweep it under the rug. But they picked the wrong person. She placed a thick folder of evidence on the table and slid it toward them. Faces in the room went from smug to alarmed as they skimmed it. These are traced emails, Serena said calmly. Bank transfers, call logs with reporters, all linked directly to Eric Calloway, not me. She leaned forward. And before you ask, yes. Our legal team and the press already have copies of these files. So if you want to talk about damage control, I suggest you start there. Silence. Calloway's face turned ashen. He jumped to his feet, his voice rising. This is outrageous. She's bluffing. Serena cut him off with a single raised brow. Am I? Raymond stood from his chair, looking every bit the CEO in control. His voice rang out, cold and clear. No, you're not. The words hit Calloway like a punch. Raymond addressed the room. Effective immediately, Eric Calloway is terminated. Full legal action will be pursued. He paused, letting it sink in. And let this be a warning. If anyone else in this company thinks they can play the same game, think again. The room sat in stunned silence. Serena didn't smile. She didn't need to. In that moment, she felt vindicated and powerful. She had been doubted, framed, and almost cast aside, but now justice had won. She had won. 2 weeks later, Serena stood beside Raymond at Daniel's high school graduation ceremony. She was now vice president at Holt Dynamics, and Daniel was receiving his diploma. Daniel, in his wheelchair, but beaming with pride, looked up at her. I told you I'd make it, he said, chest puffed out like he'd won the lottery. Serena laughed and ruffled his hair. Never doubted it for a second, she replied softly. Raymond watched them, his usual stern face softer somehow. You did good, Carter, he said quiet. She gave him a playful glare. Damn right I did, she whispered back. Daniel looked between them. Are you guys gonna hug or something? He teased. Raymond laughed. Absolutely not, he said with mock sternness. Serena rolled her eyes. God, no, she muttered. Daniel just grinned. For the first time in a long time, Serena felt she had built something real. Something that mattered. And she knew she wasn't done yet. Years later, Serena Carter sat in the executive office of Holt Dynamics, her nameplate gleaming on the door as Vice President of Corporate Strategy. What had started as just a job had become her mission. Under her leadership, the company expanded its ethical labor initiatives and launched mentorship programs. They built partnerships with minority-owned businesses. Across town, a new community center bore the name Carter Holt Foundation, funding education and job opportunities for underserved youth. At its ribbon-cutting ceremony, Daniel, now a college freshman, stood beside her, grinning like the kid who once got a free meal in a diner. Serena squeezed his hand and smiled. Because kindness, Daniel said softly, kindness always pays off. Serena looked at him, tears of pride in her eyes. For them, kindness truly had been the best investment of all. If this story moved you, consider subscribing and turning on notifications so you never miss the next inspiring story of hope and kindness.